So today I am joined by Tony Smith, who is part of a rugby coaching dynasty, really, but has coached all over the world. But I guess most people will recognise him for his time in Super League with the Giants, with the Rhinos, with the Wolves, with both sides of Hull, and of course Great Britain and England. Tony, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Not at all. Um, so you and I met when you very kindly agreed to come to our MND fundraiser lunch a couple of weeks ago for the Doddy Foundation and of course for Rob. Um, that was our first opportunity really to reflect on Rob since his passing last year, and you were very eloquent in your tribute to him. Perhaps you'd want to sort of reshare some of those thoughts first.
Yeah, I find it difficult because it's hard to do him justice in terms of the kind of character that he was and what he gave to so many people in so many ways. Through his rugby career, and the friendships and the bonds that he made with the people within his team and also the respect that he earned from his teammates and the people around him and the players who played against him also. They all respected him. He had a manner about the way he went about things that earned respect. And that's a beautiful trait to have if you're able to manage to do it. And he did it very, very well. But then, later on he retired and I had the pleasure of being asked by him to do some mentoring with him in his coaching, in his brief coaching career, because he didn't get a chance to do it for too long because he developed the symptoms, and it prevented him from going on to be what I think would have been a very good coach. But he asked me would I mentor him, and I was overwhelmed by him asking me. And so we started to work together, and there were some things that I was there to teach him, but he taught me a few lessons, and he really did. The importance of what you say to people, and he knocked me for six when he said, Tony, and bearing in mind this was probably about 2017 or early 18 maybe, and he said, Tony, when you first started at the club at the end of 2003, can you remember what you said to me? Wow, Rob. I've coached a few players along between then and then. And I went, mate, I've got to say to you, I apologise. I can't remember that specific conversation. And he said, well, and I'll give you the gist of it. It was something along the lines of, if you're good enough, doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are, you're good enough, and, I'll treat you exactly like I'll treat anybody else. If they do the job well, they keep the job. And he said that was enough for me. He said it just inspired me enough, because he'd heard so many times that he was too small.
Yeah.
But the moral of it was, and what I took from Rob was the importance of what we say to people. It can have an impact on their lives. Both, luckily for me, it was in a positive manner, but sometimes we can do the other one too, where we can put doubt in people's minds and not inspire people and not give them the right sort of encouragement, if you like. And that can have an impact too. He taught me that lesson. Another real quick one. Rob was also not probably doing what many of us do when we retire from playing and then go into coaching. We're seen to have to do unbelievable hours and long hours from, before the sun comes up to after the sun goes down. And Rob wasn't doing that in his role as an under-19s coach, and he was doing the job, but not putting in probably the extras, and I was there to say, hey, well, when you start off, you got to do this, and it's almost your badge of honour if you're going to be a coach. And he just looked me straight in the eye and said, well, if it costs me my job, so be it, because I'm not going to sacrifice my time with my family. And if you saw the strength in the way that Rob went through his illness, his family were always his priority. Well before he got ill, well before that, even throughout his sporting career. And, you know, as one of those coaches who probably made some of those sacrifices, it made me feel a little bit, you know, but I respected him in that he had the strength of character to make sure his priorities weren't you know, kind of compromised in any way. And for that, I also respected him, and he taught me some lessons that day too.
Absolutely, and you know, I've been lucky to have met Lindsay and the kids, and they're a credit to him, but they're also you know, for me, a shining light on the way in which families could be, should be, and how we can all learn something in terms of humility as well.
Absolutely.
You talked then about the impact of words, and you know, I spent a little bit of time with Richie Mather in the bar after the event, and he was joking about his time and social media with you, but you know, he was absolutely crystal clear about the impact that you'd had on him as an individual, and this almost magician-like ability you have to tap into the buttons and the motivations of individual players. I watched the other day, As Good as It Gets, the Leeds Rhinos documentary on Netflix, and you know, guys like Jonesy, guys like Kev Sinfield, Rob, Gary Hetherington, you know, all had the same thing to say about you, which was this innate ability to be able to tap into emotion, tap into expertise, and really build players beyond perhaps what they thought was possible. So my question, after that very long intro, is that a learned behavior, or is that something you just have?
I think I was nurtured somewhat in that direction, Paul, you know, but that's also learned, and, you know, through observation and copying and you know, steering away from what doesn't work, and some of the experiences that I've had throughout my life with the different coaches, but the different leaders that I've had. I spent 8 years in the banking system in Australia when I first left school, and you know, I had some really good leaders within the banking system and some really poor leaders, and they shaped me as well and taught me plenty of lessons along the way. And I just think I've been able to learn from the good and the bad experiences along the way of how to treat people and how I would like to be treated, but even more importantly than how I would like to be treated, getting to know the people that you're coaching and leading and knowing how they would like to be treated. That's more important, not just, you know, treat them exactly how I want to be treated, because they're different. You know, they're all different. We're all different. And it's knowing which strings to pull at the right time. And can I tell you, for all those lovely comments that you made about different individuals, there's plenty that I got wrong too, you know, along the way. And there were some players that wouldn't be able to say the same thing about me that you just recited there. So, you know, listen, I tried to make them right as much as I could, but that is taking a lot of consideration on how to deliver your message and who you're delivering to, and how to package it so it's best received. And that doesn't mean, you know, not being able to give the hard stuff. And I had some really, really difficult conversations with some of those people that you talked to me, spoke about there. It's about being honest, but also, you know, not brutal with it, and delivering it in a manner that is going to have the best impact on them. Sometimes it hurts, and sometimes you don't quite get it right. But and there's been times where I've had to apologise for things, the way I've put things too. It's none of us are experts at it. We get those things wrong, but we need to be big enough sometimes to say and put our hand up and say, listen, I could have phrased that better, or I could have picked a better time to deliver that, or so. But I do a lot of self-analysing of that too. I'm very, very conscious of that.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about in terms of what you're doing now a little later in terms of that balance between the leadership and the message, but also about the technical capability that you're able to bring to people. But just on your point about apologies, how sincere was the apology to the missus when you dragged her from New South Wales to a chip shop in Workington?
Yeah, that had been after, pardon me, after retirement, straight after retirement. I went into coaching, I'd retired for a while, and the rugby league kind of went into a war in Australia at that period of time. So I was down in Adelaide, which is not a rugby league playing city, and I was twiddling my thumbs, and the opportunity to get back involved in rugby league arose at Workington FC, Workington Town. So yeah, we leapt into the unknown, if you like, and it was an experience after living in a beautiful city like Adelaide to, dare I say it, there's some lovely people in Workington, but it's not the nicest venue or part of the world to live at certain periods of time of the year. But
and smelling like a chip shop every day.
Oh, that was an experience in itself. I'd have cats and dogs following me home every day because I smelled like a chippy. But yeah, no, listen, all those things are, and what it actually did do, I went back to Australia for a year or a couple of years after that, but it got us ready to come back to England. It was part of the journey, and we knew. No, and sorry to all those people who love and live in Workington, but we knew wherever we were going to go was going to be better than where we were the first time. We just knew that, and we also had an understanding of living in a different culture and a different climate, and we were prepared for it. First time round, we were a little bit shocked, if you like.
Well, you're firmly ensconced in British life now, and a proud Englishman.
Absolutely, yeah. Became a citizen in 2008.
Yeah.
Sat the test and paid the money to become British. And I'm going to say to you, Paul, I could have lived back in Australia. We chose to live here, and we've loved it. We feel honoured to be able to live on this part of the world. We're proud to be British. I'm also proud of my heritage too. I still do follow Australia in cricket. Everything, most of the other things, I'm British, and I cheer for the British teams. But yeah, no, it's been a great journey and a great experience, and it's what we've chosen. And I'm a big believer of you make wherever you are, you make it as good as you can be, and enjoy it. I've often joked about I could live in Siberia and still be happy. It's what you do wherever you are that will determine whether you're happy or not.
Yeah.
It's your approach to it. So we're more than happy here, and I love these freezing cold days that we've got at the moment.
Well, I mean, if I was being rude, I'd suggest that having lived in Workington, Siberia would probably be an upgrade. We just talked a little bit about Australia, and obviously there's a little bit of jeopardy around rugby league at the moment in the UK. I saw an interview with Eddie Hearn the other day, who apparently is going to save Super League, and one of the things he said was that we don't have the superstars anymore. We don't have the Ellery Hanleys or the Martin Offiahs or the Rob Burrows, and that's part of the reason why Super League isn't perhaps getting the traction we would all like it to see. Because in Australia they're gods, right? Well, certainly in two states. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a complex one. I don't think it's just an easy answer. I understand where Eddie's coming from in terms of, the exposure that we probably don't give or get to the public about some of our young, outstanding talent that we have in this country. I really, it's hard to do that. It doesn't mean it's impossible, and I think we should be doing more to expose more people to what our sport and our individuals and our teams are capable of. There's, it's how we do that. That's the problem. That we've got to solve it, within, if we really want to. And some people are capable of solving some problems and some people aren't. And at the moment it's a problem that isn't being solved well enough. There are some other obstacles, and I'm not making excuses, but in this country, football is number one by a country mile. It's a country mile. And then there's other sports that are ahead of us also. So to get traction and get momentum, it's not easy. But you either roll over and say it's too hard, or you roll the sleeves up and you go, right, we're going to do things differently. We're going to change some things. We're going to change our approach. And I'm not sure that we've got that happening at the moment in our sport. And we can't just keep doing the same things because, it's proven not to be the way to do things. And so there's some issues to solve, Paul. I haven't got all those answers. It's easy for us to all make judgments without having all the information. It's that's the beauty of sport, and it's the beauty of being on the outside of an organisation. You can have an opinion without really knowing the full ins and outs. But it needs a bit of a shake up our sport if it's going to not only survive but thrive.
Absolutely. I mean, as a marketing guy, I'd say a lot of it is around marketing. I played both codes and enjoyed them both immensely, but I've took mates who've never seen rugby league to the Rhinos, and they're blown away by the product. It's insanely fast. It's insanely intense. South Stand starts bouncing, or wherever you are. It doesn't have to be Leeds. The product is absolutely there. It's perhaps about the exposure, but I would say that because I'm a marketing guy.
Yeah, sure.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Is if Super League ring you, would you go back to coaching?
The way I've been openly and honestly saying it, I love when I'm coaching. And it is a privilege when you're coaching a rugby league team, and you've got, just the atmosphere and the camaraderie and the culture that, that is an enjoyable place to be. But each time I'm not coaching, I realise how much rugby league's been my vehicle to coaching. I just love coaching. I had a one-on-one session with a young coach yesterday who's come back to rugby league. He went to rugby union, but he's come back to rugby league and he's coaching. And I've been seeing him and doing some work with him for some time, and I come away pumped. We sit there and we talk about coaching, and I get to do that with a whole lot of, fantastic people, both in sport but also in businesses. And there's not a huge difference. It's because we're all dealing with human beings and the same challenges. And some people think that that it's sport that everybody feels the same way and has got the same goal. It's not true. Some of them go to work for the exact same reasons. The rest of society goes to work for some of the different reasons and all the different reasons. And it's finding out about each of those individuals and what makes them tick. Why do they want to go to work? How can you help them want to go to work, not just go to work? And there's some of the challenges that I just love, and And I think people in business kind of go, oh, well, sports people just want to go to work. Well, I know a lot of sports people who don't want to go to training. I can tell you, they don't want to have to turn up Monday morning. They just don't. We're exactly the same. So some of the the solutions to the problems from my rugby league and coaching days, they're applicable to sport too. They're to business, and cross over into business. Exactly the same. It's about us leaders trying to help people discover where they get their enjoyment out of what they do, and that's very fulfilling when you can get people to feel value and get the right rewards from going to work.
That's really, really interesting, because I should imagine most of us assume that that actually sports people just, okay, nobody wants to get up in the pouring rain on a Monday morning and run 5 miles, but they're doing something that they love, they're doing something they excel at, and they're getting paid to do it. And so surely you should be absolutely pumped that's what you get to do all day, every day.
Well, it's a really sweeping statement, to say that they love it, and that almost all of them go through different periods of not liking what they do, just like the rest of us. They just find some of them are just good at it. Some of them don't even like it that much. I know it's true. It's true. Or it's a way of earning money in a particular way that they probably wouldn't earn the same sort of money in a different way. But do they really love it? I'm just saying, not all of them at all times are that way. They go through different periods and cycles, just like the rest of society do with their jobs. And I think there's sort of this myth that we've got to find our perfect job before we can be as good as we can be. And it's wrong. It's wrong. It's just, even in the most perfect of jobs, there's some bad parts of it and some parts that you don't like. And there's some periods of time that are tough, and you'd rather walk away than do what you do. But then you stand up and, get through it, and you feel better and you learn the lessons from it. But it's no different. It's absolutely no different. And I don't want to paint a picture of all these guys who don't like their work, but they all go through struggles at different stages, and just like we do in the rest of our working careers, and whatever career we've got, there's positives and negatives, and it's how we motivate ourselves and inspire those around us to enjoy. And I mean this. I've worked in, back to my banking days, I've worked in the offices in different banks in Australia where I love going to work because there is a great atmosphere. And I've walked into other offices that I've worked in, and I hated it because the atmosphere and the culture was horrible. So that's the same in sport too. Everybody out there could imagine some team who's going through some struggles at the moment, what that would be like for them. It's what you create and what the leaders of each of those either offices or teams create that is important, that make people feel good and feel good about themselves. So it's there's so many crossovers from one to the other. There's so many things that sport can learn from business, and business can learn from sport. But it's, for mine, it's all about value in people, understanding people, and creating an atmosphere in a environment where they want to come to for good reasons,
So we're getting a very strong sense about what you're doing now, and clearly that establishing the right environment and the right culture for success is a big part of it. Before you tell me more about what you do, just out of interest, really, which would you prefer, a high performer that isn't motivated, or somebody who's perhaps not as talented and skilled but works damn hard?
Yeah, I get asked this. This is one of the most common questions. We all admire the
I was
hard
thinking I
worker.
was being insightful there, Tony. I thought I was...
No, just about every talk I go to get no, but it is. And it's a great question. It's not a bad question. It's a great question. And the way I answer it is, listen, we all admire the hard worker and the person who's dedicated. We do. We love them, and a whole team of workers. Sometimes you don't get much magic. You just get a hard-working team, and you admire that team because of their work ethic and the way they put in for one another. And then you have the maverick, or the talented person who doesn't quite fit all aspects of what the team's about. And my answer to you is, if that person can't bend enough to come back to the ethics of the team and the values of the team, if they can't adhere to most of the time, well, maybe they don't fit in the team. But before that happens, I don't want the maverick. I don't want to kick the maverick out or that special talent. I want to give them a chance and give them an understanding of, if they do, make some concessions back the other way, how important they can be for the team. But it's also getting the team to understand how important that special person can be for the team too. And my part is, I love the Mavericks. I love having those special talents and giving them a chance not to clip their wings too much. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes as coaches, we knock what makes them special out of them so they fit within the team, and they end up becoming almost like another worker, hard worker, and we think we're doing a whole lot of good for them, but we clip their wings too much. It's what makes them special too. Sometimes it's a bit of selfishness on their part, but that selfishness, they see themselves doing things that the rest of us don't see ourselves doing, and so if you clip their wings too much, but they've got to get to a certain degree of buy-in, otherwise they don't quite fit. So my answer to you, I love and I admire the workers. Would I want a team full of workers? No. I don't think that's going to get you to where you want to get to. Do I want some mavericks? Yeah, I do, but I don't want them to go too far without the rest of the team following along and being part of what they're doing. If they can't do that, well, sometimes the Mavericks got to go too.
And I guess that's the pressure of the coach, right? Managing the Mavericks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us what you're doing now.
I'm doing all sorts, and it's taken me a little while to get my head around some of the things, because one of the things, I'm pretty good at getting people together. I'm pretty good at developing culture, I think, and getting people to feel like they're valued. But one of the things, as being a coach of a rugby league team, I haven't had to promote myself in any sort of way. My players have been my number one, and if they think I'm a good manager or coach, well, that's all that really matters to me. And then other people outside, make assumptions based on how many games I've won or how long I've been doing it, and he must be all right, and they judge me in all sorts of different ways. But I've never had to self-promote. And, if you're going to own your own business, and if you're going to make a living out of passing on your message to people and having clients and people that you work with, and you got to tell them what you're doing. And for a while, apart from my immediate family and a few close friends, nobody knew what I was doing or what I was capable of doing, and I've had to convince myself a bit of this. And, recently I launched a business, and my wife's helping me, and I've got a daughter on the other side of the world. She's into marketing and social media as well, and she's given me plenty of dad advice. good advice, but dad advice, and which is great. So I kind of feel I've got a bit of support. The other thing, Paul, that aside from the promotion of what I can do, I've always been part of a team myself, and for a little while before I felt like my family was on board with me, and I felt like a lone wolf, and that was a bit scary, and it's a bit, I haven't had to deal with it, and I've had to overcome some of that. And now I feel like I'm not, because they're on board, and I feel like we're going as part of a team now again. So yeah, there's been some real difficulties that for myself that I've had to face up to and also overcome. And I like when I overcome those things. I like challenges, and I like solutions, and coming up. I've spent a whole career coming up with those. So I had to come up with them for myself, not just my team.
Well, I mean, genuinely congratulations on that. I think, as bosses and leaders, the expectation is that you have all the answers. And, Realia will be 20 years old this year, and I've spent 20 years trying to have all the answers, but that does make it an incredibly lonely place.
And we don't have all the answers.
No.
Honestly, some people would say I've had a successful career. It's because of all the people around me. Honestly, I've been able to pull my weight in some areas, but it's in the areas I haven't been able to pull my weight. I've had people there to do that around me, and it just shows you the importance of being part of a team and having and having people around you to support you and believe in you and pick up the pieces that you're not good at and develop yourself for those areas as well. And I'm in the process of doing that still. I'm a long way from being a successful business person, I can tell you, Paul, but I'm trying to educate myself as best I can and changing some of my views about things. You mentioned Richard Mathers there, and I've stood in front of many team meetings talking about how social media can be destructive. I probably hadn't opened my eyes and probably hadn't needed to understand how it can be productive too. And also a little bit outdated. I've got to sound like my father and my grandfather when I was young. It's you got to move on and embrace the new technology.
In your defence, I'm not. I think even Richie would acknowledge now that telling Twitter he'd broken his hand before the cup final was not smart when he hadn't told his boss. But we live and learn. We live and learn.
We did.
Just before I let you go, big season for Super League. Can you see past Wigan?
Oh well, they're a great team. I've got to know the coach over the last few years, and that was down to him. He picked up the phone one day and asked me would I go and meet with him, and I'd never met him before and spent any time, and that was on him. And that the fact that we met up, and I sat down at a hotel with him and had a coffee. I think it ended up about 4. Seriously, we were there for that long. When I walked out of that hotel, I went, that's a special young man. He's a special young man. I also felt like I had known him for the last 10 years and we'd been best mates for that period of time. He's got that knack. He's got that knack of making you feel in that way. And we've, remained friends ever since, and even traded messages before our own games about going easy on each other and all that sort of, well, him going easy on me was more to the point. I admire what Matty's doing there with Wigan, and I've got to say they've got a couple of very, very, very special players as well, which takes them to another. If you've got a good culture and you've got some of those special players, well, it's hard to catch, teams like that. But, the thing about sport, nothing's certain. Nothing is ever certain. We can say they're the favourites, and there's so many twists and turns. There's so many things that can go good and bad for other teams and themselves. There's going to be some periods that they'll go through some rough times for whatever reasons. Some things that we could never expect or predict. We try to, as coaches, we try to predict what's going to hold us back, but there's always new things. So that's the beauty of sport. It's uncertain. I think that's why we like to watch it. But there is as good a chance as any team, or more chance than the rest of the teams. But somebody will come out of the pack and surprise us at some stage this year as well.
Well, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that they do some kind of hangover-esque experience in Vegas, and not come back in one piece. That's the only way I think we can see Rhinos getting past them this season. And Great Britain are back. That's amazing news, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I understand why they went away from it. I was there during that period of time. I was Great Britain coach and then became England coach, and a lot of that was down to finances and Sport England money, etc., etc. But we lost part of our identity, I think, and something that, in some of our heritage, and we've got to be careful whenever we do that. Even though the money was handy at that period of time for our sport, I think we may have suffered for a number of years because of that. So I'm really glad that it's come back, and I think some of our heritage is important. We've got to move on as sport, and we've got to move, but we've got to remember our past and remember what's worked as well. And I think Great Britain worked for many, many years, and it sort of encaptured the hearts of this side of the world, but also where I was raised. It was always great growing up to watch Australia when we could beat Great Britain. It meant something a bit more, than just England.
Yeah. Well, it's genuinely fascinating conversation. I think there's a million takeouts there. One sort of observation I would make is when you talk about heritage and legacy and history, is you said that, sometimes people judge you based on the games you won. Actually, when I think of what the whole KR side is now, when I think about the golden generation of Rhinos, that was built on a legacy that you developed. So I think there's a huge amount of credit to be taken there as well.
Sometimes, Paul, but I don't take too much about that. I try to do the best I can whilst I'm there. I try to leave places in a better place than when I started. Sometimes that takes time, and some ups and downs along the way. But, I think all coaches genuinely want to leave something behind that is stable and better than when they first took over. So, if I've been able to do that in a couple of places, I'm pleased.
Well, I think credit to your daughter as well, because you've marketed yourself brilliantly in this interview. I'm going to put a link on LinkedIn to your profile. So for people who wanted to get in touch with Tony, I'm sure he'd be delighted to talk to you, and you got a really good sense of what he's about now. Tony, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Paul. Thanks for the interview, mate.
Take care.